spot where recently a couple big chunks of the shoreline collapsed. This happened over the winter about 3 years ago now. What you can see that, first of all, there's a dead tree leaning up against the island. You don't see what's growing right by the lake. Actually, that was growing in cliff collapse up underneath. And just about 50 feet or so farther up the shore, the bigger section collapsed as well. Although all along you're going to see there's broken boulders. Obviously, it's happening in the sky. The shoreline is just about identical to the nice first spot for doing. But every now and then, something else that you can see along there, some of the variation is it's a fast growing storm that you can buy along here. They're also a lot of this coloration, a lot of that surface discoloration I've been with making an announcement. There's lots of varieties. There's different shades of green and gray and blue. This is a very minor at National Lighthouse. Even right now, nothing really else on here, but over the next few weeks, they're probably going to be seeing that. Summer of 1973 that fell down. That's what's left the broken boulders between the standing part and the rest of the island. There is a little arch here, right at the base of the rock. Just coming into view, you can see some lights shining over there. And only at the base, so this is really the first time, well, last summer I guess you could kind of see it. That arch for the most part has been underwater for most of the last 10 years or so. The lake level has been particularly high over the last 10 years. We actually reached a record high in 2020 or 21, somewhere in there. Reached a record high. We're actually at a record low back in 2012 or 13. That whole span there from the record high to the record low is about 3.5 feet. Currently, we're close. There's a little that whole span there from the record high to the record low is about 3.5 feet. Currently, we're close to the long-term average. So the lake is down quite a bit. We've seen a couple of eagles so far today. We're probably going to see more through the rest of our trip. Well, it's relatively new for us to see eagles out here at all. Like 20 to 30 years ago, it was very rare to see 9 active nests just among the islands. So just in the national park, over 10 times as many eagles as there were 30 years ago. It's actually rare these days for us to run a trip and not see at least a bald eagle somewhere along the way. really never would have been more than at most half a dozen people here at any given time. While fishermen were out here, usually every couple of days, a larger boat would have come from Bayfield, made the rounds to several different camps, collecting all the fish that had been caught, and would have dropped off ice for them to cool fish for the next few days. So for the most part, the fishermen could have stayed out here throughout the summer if they wanted to. Generally, these camps are only used during the summer, although some of them are used year-round. In the winter, we commonly get ice here. Pretty normal for us to get a foot or two of ice between islands. That's underneath the ice. But they still pull out a little building like that to get some protection from the weather. Behind the buildings, you're up the hill a little bit, well, hidden behind a tree right now, but you may have noticed, or you'll see in just a minute again, there's a big solar panel back there. There's also a propane tank out here that's just hidden from view. It's just tucked into the trees. Of course, there is nothing historic about that stuff. That is for the volunteers who are out here. So people volunteer their time through the National Park Service. They spend time out here at the fish camp. Most of the lighthouses have volunteers at them, and there's volunteers at several other places around the islands. Well, those solar panels charge batteries. Most importantly then, that allows the people who are out here to recharge the batteries on their radios so that they have communications. Some of the places, that pile of rock is basalt, which is black. It looks white because it's just entirely covered in bird poop right now. And then they would draw a picture of what they thought it looked like. The earliest charts of this area are from the 1700s. They're not terribly accurate. A lot of them show that I'm looking sort of like a cat, kind of sitting with its legs tucked underneath and tail stuck out behind. Although if you look at our current charts that have been drawn using the aerial photographs, you'll see that it doesn't look quite so cat-like unless you really use your imagination. But the name has stayed with it for years. As we turn just a little bit more, there are two more islands that are now more or less straight out to our right. Nearest to us now, off to our right side, is South Twin Island, and then a little bit farther out beyond that is North Twin. Now these are roughly the same size plane, and they've been named after each other. North Twin, again this one's farthest from us now, straight out to our right. North Twin Island has been set aside by the park as kind of an environmentally protected area. They've done that because of some unusual plants that grow out there. So first of all, that island has never been logged, so there is still some virgin forest out there. Along with that, now there's wildflowers, a few other plants are a little bit unusual. So the Park Service wanted to try to minimize the risk of those plants get stepped on. Well, that used to mean that they did not allow any camping out there, and that greatly reduced the number of people going there at all. But a few years ago, the park decided they were going to allow one group at a time to camp on that island. Not many people have chosen to, but that's an option anyway. There are ore carriers out on the open waters of the lake. If you're in a position that really not a whole lot of you can see, if you can see directly ahead of us, well, I guess both of them now are just about straight north of us, and they're both going to be moving away from us. The one with the reddish hull is a Canadian boat. I'm going to try to pronounce it the Basswood or something along those lines. It's a French thing. The other one, the one with the black hull, is the Indiana Harbor. Indiana Harbor, so this way to Duluth right now, is actually one of the 1,000 bars. That one is just over 1,000 feet long. And we get just a little bit farther under, when we're sideways in front of the caves at Devil's Island, you're going to be able to look out and see those boats a lot better. site, or really every few minutes. And the idea with those is that boaters can, well, before they decide whether or not they want to come out here, pull up that website and see how big the waves are. So it's a safety thing. Relatively new. This is just the third or fourth year that those buoys have been out here. Return wave height. All that information gets sent out, radio signal. The National Weather Service picks it up, and they can tell what the weather is like all across the lake, and they don't actually need anyone to monitor it. Okay, there is one tiny little chunk of ice that's still out here right along this right now. The sun's kind of catching it. But it looks like a white rock. That's actually a little bit of ice. Just out in front of the... There's a little bit more fuel storage just to the right of the light tower. A couple of big light green tanks there. Those held diesel fuel. When the Coast Guard station was out here, they had diesel powered generators, and that was where they stored their fuel. You may have noticed there were a couple of structures right along this, where you can see some now right in front of the fog signal. There's a big pile of bricks. The other one is a big lump of concrete. The concrete lump, that used to be, it was the mount or the base for a crane. The crane could have swung out over the lake to a boat that would have been sitting there, and that's how they would have unloaded some of their supplies for the lighthouse. The pile of bricks, that was the end of a tramway. They've got little, like miniature railroad tracks on the grounds of the lighthouse here. They had a little cart that ran on those tracks. So the crane then would swing out over the lake, pick up supplies off the boat, then load them onto this little cart, and then they could wheel them to different buildings wherever they were going to be storing the stuff that they had. We are going to start heading back in toward the rest of the islands. For a little while here, there's not going to be a whole lot new for us to see, so not going to have a whole lot to tell you about. Just going to leave you alone for a little bit here until we get partway back in, and then I'll be back with you. once we can see a few new things. Out here, all the lighthouses, but particularly right here at Raspberry. Now, the first thing they did here was to build up the shoreline. Before then, the shore in front of the lighthouse looked the way it does now, just off to the right. Very steep clay banks are eroding pretty quickly. Now, the Park Service was concerned. They had figured that at the rate it was eroding, if they didn't do something about it, they thought there was a reasonably good chance that within 15 to 20 years, by about now, the lighthouse may have started falling into the lake.